Hey everyone, I'm Adam. I'm the tent guy. Today we have Corey from RVA Party Rentals. Mostly does bounce house and backyard kind of parties like that. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so thanks Corey for being the first person to say, "Yeah, I'll do it."
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, how's it going today?
Going well, going well.
So you're in Virginia. Tell us how you got started.
So I, like many people, saw someone delivering one day and thought, "Oh wow, that's pretty easy money. I think I should try that." And at that time, so let me start over. I was working at a bank, so I came from working for a bank as a branch manager. I left there 2 years ago. So while I was working at the bank, I started to get to a point where I wanted to start a business. I knew I didn't want to work for someone else, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I was at a birthday party and I saw this guy set up, and I'm like, man, he was in and out there in 10 minutes. I asked my buddy, I said, how much did you pay for that? He told me, I thought it'd be easy money, but I started researching and I just saw all the horror stories and about him blowing away. You tell your friends and family, they tell you all the negative stuff about the business. So I put it to the side for like a year. And then I saw this other guy. He showed me pictures from a birthday party he went to, and there's a water slide. Now I don't know how you grew up, but I did not know bounce houses and water slides could be rented in your backyard. People just didn't have those things when I was growing up. So I said, "This was in the backyard." He said, "Yeah." So I was amazed. I immediately that day went and looked. Was like, "Man, this is cool. If you could rent this out, it's got to be a market for it." So that day I saw that slide. I just decided I wasn't going to let anybody talk me out of it. I was going to go ahead and try it. And so I decided to buy a couple bounce houses and keep my full-time job. And that was 6 years ago.
Do you still have your full-time job?
Nope, nope. So I quit 2 years ago. May will be two years. So what I did was I stayed relatively small the first couple of years, and then COVID happened. And so when COVID happened, I had to kind of make a decision around what I wanted to do. If I want to go all in, or if I was going to back away from it. And I'll tell you what saved me. So, I wore a suit and tie to work. I had an office, made pretty good money, and it was a challenge going to do the physical work. But I got an electric dolly, and when I got an electric dolly, everything changed. And so, although I knew I didn't want to be the person doing the deliveries long term, when I got that electric dolly, I figured, hey, worst case scenario, I'm not going to starve. If I quit my job, this dolly's like the employee of the month. If I have to bust my butt until I get help, I can make it work. I didn't have to do that, but once I got that electric dolly and saw how much it changed the job, I felt comfortable leaving my full-time job.
Right. For people who don't know, bounce houses are heavy. Water slides are heavy. When you come to
Yes.
pick them up, water slides are even heavier. And if you just have a hand cart, that can be quite taxing. Now, these electric dollies aren't cheap, though, right?
They're not. Yeah, you're looking at $3,500 to $4,000 for them. They can be even higher, but they're worth every single penny. And and the other thing about it, there were times where I may have to deliver by myself because when you're starting out, you don't have a lot of employees. So I would be nervous pulling up to a house, hoping I hope they don't have a big hill. I hope they don't have a steep driveway. Right, the whole time I've got anxiety pulling up, and that started to wear on me. But I invested that money, and when I got that, that went away. And again, the business grew where I wasn't necessarily the one doing the majority of the deliveries, but for that short time, that comfort level that it gave me, where I said, if it hits the fan, I'll be okay.
Right. Yeah. In the beginning, it's hard to bring on employees because you don't have consistent work. So you're not going to find that great of people. Uh, so you're doing a lot yourself. And I always say to a lot of people, like in the party business, one of the main things of our business is material handling and logistics. Like that's how we make our money is moving stuff around, basically. And so the sooner you can invest in things to move things around faster and easier, the more profit you're going to make.
Yeah. And you retain employees, right? So if you hire a guy and you tell him, hey, this is going to be driving mostly, and then you get out there and you get that first water slide that is, filled with water and you can barely roll it, let alone, move it on a dolly. That guy who's doing it part time is not going to stick around doing that a whole lot. So some of the things that you invest in is not just to make your life easier, but it's for employee retention. The better you can make their life, the more likely they're to stick around and refer people.
Yeah, exactly. Keeps them from getting worn out, so that come the end of the week, they're not. hating the job and wanting to leave. So, how soon into it did you get the water slides?
I would say the mistake I made was my first couple units I bought, they were dry units. And then my second year, I bought one water slide. I still don't have a lot of water slide onlys because in Virginia, we can only rent them from basically June. Uh, we call it a Labor Day to Memorial Day or Memorial Day to Labor Day state. Basically, pools open up on Memorial Day here, close on Labor Day. And that's sort of that season. So I have a lot of combos that can be wet or dry. But I did invest in that second year. I did get a 16-foot slide.
Now, I'm hearing from a lot of people that water slides are the water slides and combos are the money makers. Single units, like for people who don't know, single unit would just be bounce house. A combo would be a bounce house with a slide on it, and then a water slide is a water slide. Is that true for you? Like,
Yeah, that absolutely. The water slides are probably your biggest money makers, but keep in mind that a lot of people that live in warm weather states, you can rent that out 8, 9 months out the year. Where if I spend, 4 or 5 grand on a water slide, and I only rent it for 3 months, when I'm deciding where I want to invest my capital, then I'm probably going to buy a combo that can be used wet or dry. So that can go out. We have about a 9 month season here. And that can go out the entire 9 months. During the summer months, we attach a slide, charge a little more to rent it wet. But those are the money makers. Your dry units and your smaller units, they're something that for customers that have smaller yards, but they're not the money makers.
I know a guy who he lives in a more of a city. He really only rents out 10x10s and 12x12s because backyards, and
Right.
makes like 300,000 a year just doing that size tents. He's got other tents for the suburbs around, but
Yeah.
it's just kind of crazy, and it's crazy. It's different everywhere. I was on your website and I saw games and stuff too. Is that like an add-on to the bounce house stuff, or is that like are people renting that individually?
The inflatable games I'll rent individually. The Connect Four and the Jengas, they have to be add-ons. So how I look at the games are my games are typically rented by larger organizations. So whether it's an obstacle course or a game, I try not to just look at the money that I made on that because sometimes I think, well, if I didn't have the game, they probably would not have also rented the obstacle course, the cotton candy machine, and the other things. So the games don't go out in backyards very often, but they almost always go out when it's a field day for a school or a big fall festival for a church. And occasionally, if someone wants to rent tables and chairs, I'll sell the games as an add-on for adults because they don't have to go in them, and they're still fun for adults. They're drinking, they're shooting the basketball out there, they're playing
Right.
giant Jenga. Those things can be rented to adults as well.
Yeah, all right, you said tables and chairs. Now, this is like a big thing between bounce house companies and tent companies. A lot of bounce house people don't want to do tables and chairs or tents. I know you got 10x10s and I think 10x15 or 20s on your website, and you got tables and chairs. You're not, because you don't have that much of it and you don't have big tents, you're not doing just those orders, right? Those are like add-ons to your bounce house business.
Correct. Yeah. If it's a large enough order, I'll do it. But I am one of those people who don't necessarily like doing the tables and chairs uh, because let me start off by saying this. You just talked about your buddy that does 300,000 doing small tents, right? Um, Bounce houses, I'm sorry. There is money in everything. You just have to decide how you want to make your money. There is not a right or wrong answer. A tent guy is going to tell you that a tent's the best way to make money. A bounce house guy is going to tell you a bounce house guy. I never tell people what they should or shouldn't do. How I position it is in a perfect world, tables and chairs for bounce house companies are additional profit because you can add on to a delivery that you were already going to anyway. But in reality, when you do not have unlimited trailer space and unlimited staffing, when a customer requests two tables and 12 chairs, those 2 tables and 12 chairs are going to take up just as much space as a bounce house that might pay $300, but you're only getting a couple dollars more. And so for me, you can't, the math is just the math. The math doesn't lie. Yes, there's extra profit with unlimited space, but in some scenarios, it is taking up space or causing you to have to go back and reload your trailer. So, there isn't a right or wrong answer to whether you should do it or not, because if you've got a big operation and you're just looking to give your guys work, by all means, you should do it. But when you're someone like me who has to turn business away in many cases, and sometimes it's because I've got this other stuff on it, that can sometimes be frustrating.
Right. So speaking of that, like, what is your delivery vehicle type of situation?
Yep. So I run two Chevy Silverado 1500s with one enclosed trailer, 14 feet, and then another. I can't remember if it's 12 or 16 feet, but two trailers. And I'm actually buying another trailer tomorrow to start running a third vehicle, and that will just be. I have another Tahoe that's for backup. That'll be the third vehicle.
Nice. Yeah. So in the world of tents versus bounce houses, a lot of bounce house dudes are out of trailers, which actually makes a lot more sense because when you roll some of these things up, they're gigantic, and putting them on a lift gate into a box truck doesn't always work out. And uh, just using a trailer makes more sense. The only downside is some people can't drive a trailer that well.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
gonna park in the street and then bring it when they, some people could get maybe 50 feet, 60 feet closer, but
Yep.
too much of a, it's an art.
You hit it right on the head. It's what I said earlier. There's never a right or wrong answer, right? It's pros and cons to everything you do. I think everyone has to make decisions based on their specific niche, their business. We will eventually add a box truck, but right now, the flexibility of the trailers, just being able to load them on really quick, make more sense for us. Especially with the electric dollies, it's just pressing the button, going right up, and it's on there. But we will eventually, add a box truck just for some diversity in the fleet.
Right. Yeah, back to the tables and chairs versus bounce houses. You're right. If you're only doing two tables and 12 chairs and that's taking up room, that's kind of a pain. You almost have to be at scale for both of them. Like the few companies that I know that do both successfully have a lot of bounce houses and a lot of tents, and they're keeping guys busy, and they got a lot of vehicles. That's the only time it makes sense. Like for me, it wouldn't make sense to do just one, to own three bounce houses to rent out because that's taking up space on the truck. And it's just, I'm not making that much off of them consistently. So for
Yeah.
you, I get it. In the future, when you have more space, then obviously it makes a little more sense because there's a lot of parties you go to that get your bounce house, but then also are calling a tent company to do it too. So like there's the opportunity to you to grab it all.
Yeah, I see that quite often. And, so I want to start offering table and chair pickup this year. I just moved into a warehouse this year. And so I have the opportunity to offer pickup. And so I think I'll do that because I'll offer limited hours when we're here anyway on Mondays and Fridays. And so I'll do that. But for us, I think we might have made I think I made 5 grand last year off tables and chairs,
Right.
and so it's kind of like 5 grand's not nothing, but it ultimately I could have made that up with a couple more bounce house rentals, in the year, 2 or 3 a month would have made more than that. So 15% of my customers get them. So that's what my number is. So that 15% of customers only account for 5% of the table and chair rentals. What I can't and don't know is, well, how many of that 15%, if I did not offer tables and chairs, would have went somewhere else?
Right. That's a tough. Yeah. There's no way to track that one. All right. So we're trying to like teach people about this business a little bit. What's one mistake that you made in any of your 6 years that like if you knew now, you wish you knew, you can tell someone else?
Oh, it's a lot because the party rental group and some of those things they were not, if they were around, I was not aware of them 6 years ago. So the mistake I made in the beginning was going cheap on some of the services that ultimately automate and make your life easier. So I'll give you an example. I was smart enough to go with the booking software. I started with Inflatable Office. I think I tried it without it for about 3 months, and I was, doing all these other methods to track it. I got a booking system, but then I fought getting IO phone. I fought getting Inflatable Office workers. And when I started, they started sending text messages for me, reminding my customers, and I started doing all these things. I didn't run into issues with customers not being there when we arrived. I didn't run into payment issues because they were, automated ways to charge their card or to remind them to make their payments. So not going cheap on services that are going to make your life easier, because ultimately when you start out, a lot of times you have another job. And if you can get these things to do stuff automatically for you, um, I think it makes your life easier.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of people starting your business or my business have jobs and they're doing this on the side. So spending a little bit to get all these things so you don't have to do them, because office work can take a lot of time. And if you don't get back to people fast enough, they're already on to the next person.
Yep. Another thing specifically to bounce houses that I see a lot of I laugh every time I see it. I see a lot of newbies in the group because you just don't know better. So when I started, we would rent the bounce houses. I would blow them up in my yard, clean them, then take them out. And I would literally rush home from work to try to do a couple a day. And then I started one day, was like, man, I'm going to just have to try to clean that pickup or clean it, at the customer's house at delivery. And then I realized after I joined the group that a lot of companies do it that way. But for like 2 years, I was out there, running myself ragged and trying to do all of this stuff that really, it takes 5 minutes at a customer's house, but it
Right.
takes 30 minutes if you've got to blow it up, clean it, take it down, roll it. Now you're spending on one bounce house what it would take you to do on all of your other, 4 or 5 bounce houses. So that would probably be one of the big things for new people starting out. And then the final thing, it's a mistake, but I fixed it really quickly. So most of these booking softwares offer auto booking. And I know that a lot of people love it, and I'm not telling them not to do it. But to me, when I had my system, which allowed a customer to go online and completely book without me reviewing it, I found myself being in some neighborhoods that I didn't necessarily want to deliver to. I found myself having a bunch of customers with the same start and end time, which made logistics a little more difficult. And I ran into a lot more issues. I took auto booking off, and I didn't lose 1 ounce of business. And as a matter of fact, to this day, I manually review every booking request. I do it pretty fast, but I go look at the house. I go compare to see where they are. And so I'm not sure if it's the same in your industry, but the system will calculate. They'll say you live 15 miles away. This is what we're going to charge you for mileage, right?
Right.
Well, if you have auto booking on, it's going to go through and charge them, let's say $2 a mile. But what I learned very quickly is all mileage is not created equal. If it's 15 highway miles and I'm going 60 to 70 miles per hour, that's a 12 to 15-minute drive. If it's 15 minutes and I'm going on a single lane road through the backwoods going 30 miles per hour, stopping at stoplights, stopping at stop signs, that could be 30 to 40 minutes. I'm not going to charge the same delivery fee to a customer that's 15 minutes away as opposed to a customer that's 40. And the only problem is the system can't identify that if you have it on auto booking. You have to be able to manually look at that. So the reason I mention that is I'm focusing on making profit. Every deal is not necessarily profitable, but when I had it on auto booking, I could control it. So that's my advice. I know that people love it, but I found that my jobs were much more profitable. My days were a lot better when I turned off auto booking and I manually.
Right. I like it. I've never liked auto booking. I do understand it for a lot of bounce house companies doing it. For a party rental company or a tent rental company, it's people don't know what they need. They may order a 20 by 30 tent for 200 people. They don't know anything. When they really need a 40 by 100 to do a 200 person wedding. And then if we show up, then they're going to be mad at us. So we need to review everything and make sure everyone's got the right, size stuff. And I imagine bounce house thing too. Like if you're getting a huge giant water slide and your backyard's only 10 by 10, like the auto booking would have allowed that.
Absolutely. And I don't do it with every house, but so if you live in the city limits, we get these customers that have small backyards and they always want to book the largest thing we have. So if I see it's within the city limits, the majority of the time I'll go to Google Earth. It takes 2 minutes to literally measure on Google Earth and see how large their backyard is. And I can reach out and say, hey, you don't have enough space for this. Yes, it'll fit, but your kids aren't going to have any space to run around. Let's move it to this unit right here. And those are the small things that don't take a long time, but they eliminate the issues that you just talked about where you get to their house and something doesn't fit. In 6 years, I've had it happen one time where we couldn't set up because it didn't fit. And the only reason is because I couldn't see their backyard on Google Earth due to the trees, right?
Right.
One time. We don't get there and that stuff happens. And I hear these horror stories, but, and people say, well, I'll charge them anyway, or I'm going to do this or that. The reality is you can do that, but then that customer can go on there and bash you on reviews. And so you've got to pick and choose your battles. So if you can nip that stuff in the bud up front by talking to the customer and reviewing it, it just makes life a whole lot easier on the back end and a lot less stressful.
Yeah, for sure. I also like Google Earth and Google Satellite because it helps you plan logistics too. Like if you're going into the city, their address may be on this street, but you'll see that the driveway or parking lot is on this street. And so instead of people spending crap ton of time trying to figure out where to go, you just tell your guys, or hey, the driveway's over here. Don't be going around the block 5 times or whatever. Or even people's houses. You just learn a lot of things that save you time on logistics. Okay, that's cool. So what are your future plans?
That's a great question because I go back and forth on, my future plans. Right now, like I said, I moved into a warehouse, so I'm looking to grow. I'm looking to take that next step, but I'll be honest, I am not looking to be the biggest organization in town. You asked me earlier, and I didn't want to give a extremely long-winded answer, but I did not leave corporate America to start my own business and go through the exact same thing that I went through in corporate America, which is grow earnings per share at all costs, no matter what, no matter how long you got to work, no matter how long you have to run people into the ground. As long as you grow earnings per share, in our industry to translate, it would be growing your revenue. That's the only thing that matters. That isn't the only thing that matters to me. I love that I had December, January, and much of February off to spend time with my family. I love that I got to go to my daughter's school today and eat lunch with her. I coach a lot of the sporting teams in the area. And so those may seem unrelated to my goals for the business, but everything that I do for the business has to fit around my life. I'm not going to make my life fit around the business. And, I've learned that, and I feel like that's what's going to guide me. So hiring more employees so that I do less deliveries. I would say I'll do about 30% of the deliveries now, and I want to get that to zero. But
Right.
right now I do a lot of the Friday deliveries, and my guys do most of the ones on the weekend because they have full-time jobs. So I want to take that next step of getting a full-time employee next year to help me run it. But outside of that, I don't have grand, goals of becoming the biggest in town. I want to earn a decent living. I was fortunate enough to come into this business, financially, I won't say well off, but I was in a good financial position, having, made a good salary, working for the bank, saving my money. As long as I earn a decent living and I can have the time back with my family, I'm going to be satisfied. So hiring right now is my number one focus so I can continue to scale.
Right. So when I ask that question, I guess most people do think like, what are your goals for the business? But you have a different goal, life. So that is a future goal and current goal. That's cool. Yeah, I made that mistake. I was on every single delivery and everything, and my life sucked. And then I started hiring people. I'm like, okay, my life doesn't suck as much anymore. And now I'm in the same position trying to get to the point where I'm just never going to be needed again. I will just come in and check on things here and there. And that's my ultimate goal as well. And for me as well, I could grow to be the biggest guy in town, but do I want to? I don't, I definitely don't want to. I'm happy making the money I make and being free to do other things. So I think that is a good goal. Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah,
Revenue. I've talked about this a lot too. So everyone's always like revenue. I want to be a million. I want 5 million. But if you're not becoming profitable in that, then you may make 5 million a year, but you're not making any money. Like
yeah,
there's a guy out in California. He was doing a million a year at a 10% profit margin, which meant he takes home $100,000. He was like, he slashed a bunch of stuff, got rid of a bunch of stuff, made things more streamlined. Now he makes 600,000 a year, but a 30% profit margin. So now he's taking home 180 instead with less work and less guys. And, you know, it's more about profit than those magical numbers.
It's I'm glad you said that because one of the things that I'm in the groups a lot, and there's an ego involved with people when they talk about their revenue, right? It's my revenue, my revenue, my revenue, right? And I'm not knocking anyone, but all revenue isn't created equal to your point because a person, for example, if you're in an area where it's cold and you're running 6 months out the season, right? You could do 20,000 a month and which fairly easy, but that's 120,000. Someone else does 20,000 a month at 12 months out the year, they're 240,000. So for you to get to where they are, let's say they're doing 400,000, you've got to do a lot more logistically. You've got to run more vehicles. You've got to run a tighter operation to get to that revenue. So revenue to me should be compared in people in similar areas. The people that are operating in Florida, California, and Texas, that's more of a comparable revenue comparison. You could be in New York or Virginia running a really successful business and be doing 40,000 a month, and somebody else is doing 20,000 or 25,000 a month, and they're doing more revenue than you for the year just because they
Right.
can operate 12 months. And there's nothing you're going to be able to do to that. So you might try to judge yourself based on another company, but the reality is you're running an organization that's doing 40, 50 grand a month, but you just can't do that for 12 months out the year. And that company can. And then to the profit point, when I worked for the bank, I saw that there were $600,000 companies doing 300,000 in profit, and there were $600,000 companies doing 100,000 in profit. If you only focus on the revenue, that goes back to what I said about auto booking. You'll get probably more revenue, but I guarantee you that those deals will be less profitable than if you had manually looked at them to say, hey, I know you want it from 2 to 8. I can get to you from 2 to 6 because I'm already going to be over there. That's automatically building profit into that deal if you can put that pickup close to somewhere where you're already going, as opposed to having to leave it the next day or coming and pick it up late. Those are things that increase your profit immediately.
Right. Yeah, I have noticed in the bounce house groups, it's a lot of revenue talk. In the tent groups, it's a lot of how many tents do you own. And for the people who don't have as many tents, they might feel, a little embarrassed, but it's the same underlying thing. Like I may have less tents than you, but because I run my business a certain way, I know I'm making more profit than you. The 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 question should be, what was your profit margin last year? And then everyone should judge themselves off of that, and then that'll light a fire under everyone and be trying to beat the other person and get a better profit margin.
Yeah, but that's the measure of how successful you are, right? If if someone if a guy goes out there and shoots 1,000 3 pointers and makes 100, that's not really a good 3 point shooter. He made 100, but he shot 1,000. He's not going to be in the NBA very long. You get judged on the percentages because it's about being efficient, not just taking any job because you can. That's really not, to me, that's not really running an efficient business that's being smart about it. You can eliminate certain things that aren't making money and focus on the things that are making you money, which everything we say ties back together. One of the first things I said is I'll never tell someone else what they should or shouldn't do. But
Yeah.
the reality is it all makes money. Tents make money, chairs makes money, bounce houses make money. There's nothing better or worse than the other. The problem is when people try to do everything, you become a jack of all trades, but a master of none, right? You're better off mastering something and be the best in that. You're going to go a lot further if you can do that than you just are pretty good at a bunch of things.
Right. Yeah, that makes me think of like, in the bounce house business, someone may want to add this and add that, and we're gonna, it'll bring in money. Oh, let's add rides, let's add a bull. In mine, but my business took a while to get there. It was, oh man, these take up a lot of space and they were expensive. They're not going out every weekend. But these things over here go out every single weekend and they stack and they sit in a corner and it's great. I sold off all that stuff that, yeah, made money, but not often and was kind of a pain. Uh, and I talked to a lot of people in the bounce house business too that they get rid of certain slides that are super heavy and go with a cheaper slide that rents out for the same but is lighter. And they evaluate what's making money and don't get the other things. So that's a big thing too.
You hit it on the head. You know what you're talking about because everything you said, I made those decisions again. Big slides make a lot of money, but they're not for me. I'm not going bigger than 18 feet. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to put my employees through it, and I'll leave it up to somebody else. and everything's not for everybody. And that's really been one of my mottos that I think has allowed me to remain happy. It could impact my growth, but I worry about my happiness, whether it's in professionally or personally. My decisions revolve around my happiness, and that means turning jobs down. But I learned a long time ago, all money ain't good money. And if it's gonna put me through the ringer to make it, then I could have just stayed and worked for somebody else for that. That's not why I started my own business and wanted to work for myself. I do care about my customers. I want to provide a great service, but if they want something that I'm not willing to do, I'll send them to somebody else.
Yeah, it took me a while to learn that too. I do want to say to people watching that you and me are kind of in a more luxurious position, being, you're 6 years in, I'm 15 years in. Over time, you can say no to things. I do understand in the beginning, you put a bunch of money into whatever business it is. You kind of got to hustle a little bit, make that money. But then as you're making that money, then you can decide, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Not worth it. So don't feel like you got to be where we're at. You can hustle in the beginning.
You can hustle, but I'll tell this, not just in our industry. I used to tell this, part of being a branch manager is you're managing salespeople. So I was fortunate enough that carried over. Financial advisors, bankers. I managed the people that manage the tellers. I used to try to tell them to get rid of a scarcity mindset, right? And a lot of people have scarcity mindsets. And what that means is they think if they lose this sale that they're not going to get another one. And I've been so blessed that I don't have a scarcity mindset. I had a customer call me last week, say, "Hey, I need to cancel." It was like the day before. I could have charged him another fee. I kept the deposit. I kid you not. I just sent him an email, cancel, said, hope your son feels better. Whatever they told me the reason was. I'm not exaggerating. By the time I hung up the phone, I had another call, and I told the customer, I said, "Hey, the one you want, I can't get to you, but I got one on the truck that I can get to you, and it's going to be a $50 short notice fee." So not only by being polite, giving the money back, did I get that deposit, rent that item, and got more money from it because I just don't have a scarcity mindset. And if you can kind of get yourself out of that, everything opens up. If a customer doesn't want to do something, it doesn't mean you don't hustle, but it means that there will be another one if you consistently go to the plate and swing every time. You're going to get a good pitch, and that's just how I feel. I would give everyone get out of the scarcity mindset. There is enough business to go around, and there are enough customers for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. The party rental business there's not enough stuff for every party that's going on. So I want to say that about pricing too. Everyone feels like they have to be the lowest price, and they're out there doing all this crazy work when you could be doing half the work, making the same amount of money. And that's a scarcity mindset too, I'd say. I never really thought I like the phrasing scarcity mindset, but you could be charging more for your slide or tent. It's still going to go out. Yeah, sure. Those other guys are going to get booked up first, but by the time when they're booked up, people are going to be calling you. And the people who are calling you are usually the more desirable customers, not looking for the cheap stuff.
Absolutely. That's the key. Yeah, for sure.
So when you first began, did you have good prices or did it take a while?
I never wanted to be the bottom, but I had competitive pricing. And I'll be honest, I probably was on the lower, I didn't know that I was on the lower end. One thing that helped me raise my price is the party rental group, inflatable office group, because I wasn't doing a good job of keeping up with my competitors. So I would say I was in the 50% range, if that makes sense. So I definitely wasn't the bottom. There were some people in like Facebook marketplace and stuff like that. I came out the gate. I never did that type of stuff. I would go, let's say somebody was charging 300 and they was a big company. I might have charged 275, 270 or something like that. And then I got to a point, I will say it took me about 3 years before I felt comfortable truly raising my prices up significantly. And now, if they need to be raised, they just get raised. I'll raise them on a weekly basis, to be honest with you,
Right.
if I feel the need to, because I feel like I provide a level of service that warrants a customer paying it. But I will, to your point, that is tough in the beginning because you have to try to find something to stand out. You have to give them a reason to go with you as opposed to this established company when you have no reviews. But you can't be so low that you don't make money and that you just it's not even worth doing the.
Right. I say to all new companies, really the only thing you need to stand out is your stuff is new. People pay more for a new car than a used car. So if they know, if you can get that across, like my stuff is brand new, like fresh out the box, I think that's your selling point. Um, so when you raise prices, I just want to reiterate this to people. When you raise prices, did your next following year decrease in revenue or not?
No, I mean, it will not decrease in revenue, and to be honest with you, you probably won't even get less bookings unless you're a person that just continues to raise and continue to raise. But if you doubled your prices and did half the work, you make the same amount of money, right? So if you just do more than if you double your prices, which I'm not suggesting double them, but I'm using it as an example to say if you doubled them and you just did one more delivery than half, you made more money with half the work. So obviously, if you do half the deliveries, you have dramatically increased your profit because you're not driving all over town. So raising my prices was scary. I won't lie, it was scary, but I'm extremely comfortable doing it now. And everywhere else, if you go to Five Guys and get a burger and fries, it's $20. You know, if you go to McDonald's, it's $14. So we can't continue to lag the other industries, especially if you want to pay your guys well. If you want to pay your employees well and retain them, then you've got to charge a fee to a customer that allows you to pay your employees well.
Yeah, that's a big thing. A lot of people don't want to pay people well, but really, like when you sit there and break down the math, if you pay them 3 to 4 extra dollars an hour over an 8 hour period, that's not that much. Like, come on, it just pay, pay people and you'll get good people.
It's been I don't want to get on a soapbox, so stop me if I go more than 60 seconds. But I see in the groups a lot, and I see so many people talking about how employees don't want to work anymore. And I understand where that comes from. But what I see is the people that have failed to adapt to the new marketplace. A lot of the people that we would have hired 10 years ago now drive Uber, they drive Lyft, they deliver for Amazon. They have these very flexible schedules doing something very similar. So it's not that they don't want to work, it's that they have other options. If you go to McDonald's today, there are more people picking up DoorDash and Uber Eats than customers in line. All of those are people that we would have pulled from. So the days of the business owner making 300 grand and paying the employees $8 an hour, that's over. I saw an interview with the Home Depot CEO that started it. He said we could not have started Home Depot and grown it as big as we have in this market today because you've got to treat your employees almost like partners. You know, you've got to pay them because they don't owe you anything. They're working a job, and if they find a job that they like better, that pays them more, that's where they're going to go. So it can't be all about the money, but you also have to understand that your competition isn't work for you or do nothing. It's hey, they can just go out there in their car, go pick up some customers whenever they want, clock in, clock out, and make money. That's who you're competing with. And you've got to come with that mindset. You can't have a mindset of, hey, these people just don't want to work anymore.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to work anymore for hard labor and low wages. Like I said, $3, $4 extra an hour so that you're competitive. The math on the end at the end of the week isn't that insane to your pocketbook. All right. So we're gonna wrap it up here in a second. What advice would you give to someone they don't own nothing? They're seeing us talk right now and they want to start a bounce house business.
I would say, what's your why? You know, you've got to know your why behind it. Because if you think it's just going to be easy and it's going to be something that you drop off, the same thing I thought when I started it, you're going to be in for a world of struggle because when you start off, you're going to work a lot of weekends. Let's be real, you're going to work every weekend. You're gonna have a lot of time away from your family, and if you don't know your why, meaning like why am I doing this, then it's going to be difficult. You're going to quit, you're going to give up, or you're going to put a strain on your personal life, your marriage, or your relationship with your kids. Um, the other piece is everything I just said. If you're married, you need to talk to your spouse about that. You need to make sure that your spouse is going to be comfortable with you being gone every weekend for the next 3 years until you can scale your business. And they're going to be the ones with the kids. Because if they're not, then don't start it. Because you're going to start and fail. Get into something else. Because when it isn't just how much of an entrepreneur or how hard you work, it's everybody has to be on board. When you leave out at 7:30 in the morning and you come back later and your wife or husband is with the kids, if they didn't sign up for that, that's not going to fly long term. So all of those are things I would think of before you start. If you decide to get into it, go big. Go ahead and go big. Don't do what I did. Go slow for 3 years. Go big from up front, up top. You can grow really fast in this industry. I intentionally stayed slow, but if I'd grown big, I'd be double or triple where I am now. But I don't regret it. But it would have been better to go big up front.
That's some excellent advice because a lot of people do think like you did the bounce house was going to be easy, but they don't see all that other stuff and how heavy these things are and the cleaning and keeping track of things. And then you're gone on the weekends. Bounce house people don't talk about that enough to newcomers. This is a weekend business. This isn't like party rentals where I'm setting up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and not picking up till Monday, Tuesday. This is you're delivering that day a lot of times on for a bounce house, or sometimes the day before and picking up immediately the next day on Sunday. You're not leaving it as long as you are a tent. Tents, you can kind of like, I don't work on the weekends, but bounce house guys, you're working on the weekends. So if you're thinking that, you got a normal job and this is going to be easy on the weekends, it's not. And I'm glad you said it because a lot of bounce house people don't.
Yeah. If I had to do it over again, honestly, a guy reached out to me and I told him, I said, go in the tents. And I said, I don't want to discourage you. It sounded like he had his mind made up. And I was like, go in the tents, man. I said, I know nothing about tents, but I said, I know enough to know that if I were starting over and I didn't know anything about bounce houses or tents, I would go in the tents for exactly what you said, because of the flexibility of saying, hey, I'm setting up all my stuff on Thursday and I'm going out of town for the weekend and I'll be back on Monday to pick up. I'm not saying you can't do some of that with the bounce houses, but in general, if you're starting earlier and delivering 2 or 3 days before, it's because you're delivering every single day. It's not because you're about to be off the weekend.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good point. Well, Corey, thank you for being on with us and I appreciate your time, man.
No problem. Thanks for interviewing me.